This is Kyle Whittingham's last season at Utah. Like one of the most legendary coaches in the Big 12 has done. And he's 0-3 in his last 3 against BYU. Ugh. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. That's Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars. And you're thinking, man, I've heard a lot of BYU talk here recently. Well, they are undefeated, #1 in the Big 12 as we speak. And it's I continue. It's the Santa Claus thing. You kill Santa Claus, you become Santa Claus. BYU right now holds that moniker in the Big 12 alongside Cincinnati, Texas Tech. I still think Utah is up there. Arizona State, Houston. There are a myriad of teams that will compete for this league as the weeks go on. Jake, we won't even start there, though. We will start with the BYU guy. I mean, you work for KSL, so you kind of cover a little bit of everybody. We will start with Kyle Whittingham being done at Utah. I think this is his last season at Utah. If it's not, things get even more problematic. I can explain. Then Texas Tech. They're in the headlines for a lot of bad reasons. They're going to the SEC, and then they can't throw tortillas, and then the other teams are dropping knives. I will finish with, look, what I learned this weekend, and Jake is the expert as somebody who is openly a member of the church. What I learned is Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, normal people. Despite what like TLC or whatever those shows are, I want to tell you, normal people, and I think Big 12 fans could learn a thing or two or enlighten themselves in some ways. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Jake, here's the deal. Morgan Scalley, coach in waiting for Utah. I've heard from sources that last season Whittingham planned to retire. He kind of mentioned that at Big 12 Media Days too. He's like, I'm ready. He didn't. And I've heard from others that Scalley didn't love it. He fully expected like the torch to be passed down this past offseason. Whittingham wanted one last ride to beat BYU, to win a Big 12 championship, to right the ship. He's now lost 3 straight against the Cougars. And in his illustrious 22 years, if he was 0-18 against BYU, they would hate him, run him out of town. This is the most important thing you can do as a coach at BYU or Utah is beat the other. Whittingham, if he's not done after this season, is likely going to lose Morgan Scalley and half the staff departs. If he is done this postseason, 0-3 in his last 3 against BYU. The ripple effect this just set on Utah is one that the Big 12 is going to feel.
No doubt about that, Drake. And I can tell you, there were strong indications. Had last season gone differently, obviously not losing Cam Rising to that hand injury that ultimately cost him essentially his career, yeah. He was planning on stepping aside because he wanted to go out with a bang and he wanted to go out with Cam Rising. Well, things went awry and he decided, you know what, I need to run it back. I need to try something different. And quite frankly, I need to have the upper hand over BYU before I go out. And he did not get that. He loses once again on Saturday night. And you're right, Drake. The other situation is here. The longer he holds on, the more likely Morgan Scalley is going to have wandering eyes. And you and I have both seen it. There are a number of power forward jobs that have come open that would love to have a guy of his caliber. So if he plans on sticking around, he also can plan on having a decimated staff to have to rebuild on the fly for however long he decides to stick around in Salt Lake City.
I think the most important piece of this, and there are Big 12 fans at Cincinnati or Texas Tech or UCF, like, okay, so why should I care? If I'm listening to Locked On Big 12 or Locked On Cougars, they've stumbled upon you. Why should I care? The care is we just lost Mike Gundy, the Gary Patterson, talking like the long-tenured Big 12 coaches, the long-tenured coaches who are at Big 12 schools that have left this league. It looks a lot different than it did 3, 4, 5 years ago from expansion into coaches departing or being fired. This would be another that resets Utah if Scalley leaves, because the idea here is that Scalley continues what Whittingham has done. If this offseason, Whit says, I want one more year to beat BYU, and maybe he'll be here forever if that's the case. If he decides that he's going to stick around, I do think Scalley goes to a UCLA and finds success as a head coach and takes a large portion of the Utah staff and players with him. That's where this gets really tough if you're the Utes, because I do believe, like you alluded to, Scalley wants it. He wants it soon.
That's the thing about this. Morgan Scalley is a Utah man through and through. I can tell you just based on the interactions I've had with him, the people I know that know him, Utah is his school. But Drake, he is sick of waiting around. He's been playing second fiddle for too long now, and he does want to ascend to the top chair. And I don't know what it's going to take to essentially tell Kyle to move aside. But if they don't, if Mark Harlan can't convince Kyle Whittingham, it's time to move along, because he has a deal that he'll be a university ambassador for the next decade after he ultimately retires at Utah. But if they cannot get him out of that chair and put Morgan Scalley in said chair, all of a sudden, there are a whole list of things that Utah could find themselves in trouble with when it comes to a situation that it looks like it could devolve into if Morgan Scalley were to move along, Drake. Because the issue is, if he leaves, as you mentioned, he takes probably some coaches with him, he takes players with him, and then suddenly, on the fly, you're having to rebuild a staff, rebuild a roster that has already been hurt in terms of defections away from the university due to NIL and the like. I just don't envy what that would take for Utah and Kyle Whittingham to try to put that back together on the fly, because he is a guy who I know, speaking of Kyle Whittingham, has a very, very tight inner circle. He's got a small group of coaches he gets along with. He doesn't have an expansive list of people he could reach out to rebuild that staff very, very quickly. So it just seems like it's time to move along and let Morgan Scalley take over if you want to guarantee continuity. Now, if you don't and you want a complete wholesale change, that also is in the cards.
So I've looked at these numbers since 1978 when Utah and BYU are in the same conference, same playing field as far as revenue goes from a TV share standpoint. BYU dominates the rivalry, and you can look into that deep if you want to, or you cannot. I think it's kind of cherry picking one of those stats of like, look at this, BYU's better, but in the same conference now, the last 3 times BYU has gotten the better of Utah. Is it safe to say, I'm going to make this statement. If Kyle Whittingham had beaten BYU this year, specifically, he's certainly done this offseason. He's got out of the way what he needs to do. Had he beaten BYU last year, there's a chance he hangs it up after a bowl season, first year in the Big 12. He beat BYU. Is there a way we get to the end of this year, the end of next year, and say, wow, BYU sent Kyle Whittingham out the door without beating the Cougars 3 times, and that's going to tarnish his reputation?
It would tarnish his reputation, absolutely, because he was asked the question. I was sitting in the post-game press conference on Saturday night with Kyle Whittingham, and he was asked the question that, does losing to BYU affect anything with regards to your decision, losing 3 straight? And he said, well, we won 9 straight before that, so we're really up in that ledger. He deflected the entire question with that answer, and he doesn't want to address it. I fully understand that, because he's still got 5 games left in the regular season here, and they're going to go to a bowl game, and they're already almost guaranteed that. So I just look at it as the situation is Kyle wants nothing more than to leave Utah in pretty good hands. But even beyond that, he wants to have the upper hand on BYU, and BYU could have just ushered him out the door without him actually getting that upper hand.
We will, before we get into Texas Tech, I want to give you the final few games here on Utah's schedule. Colorado, that should be a win. At home against Cincinnati, I do think Utah is the better team. That's a win. Against Baylor, they look hapless right now. A win. At home against Kansas State, that's a win. And then the Kansas Jayhawks, I think that's a win even on the road. Utah's a 10-2 football team in 2025.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that they are, Drake. The situation is they've put themselves way behind the 8 ball, because they can be 10-2 and be completely on the outside looking in when it comes to the Big 12 title game. And that's the disappointing part if you're a Utah fan, is the fact that you have to have a lot of things go wrong for other teams, including BYU, to find yourself going to Arlington. But 10-2, it'd be a nice bounce back effort for Kyle Whittingham. And if it plays out the way that we're kind of talking about here, Drake, where Kyle does step aside and hands it off to Morgan Scalley, that would be a good note to go out on, even if he doesn't make the title game, because it means that Utah's in a fairly good place, all things considered.
Yeah, if BYU and Utah both make it to Arlington, I've got a wedding that day. I don't love anybody that much. I will be in Dallas, Texas.
Drake's RSVP will say thank you, but no thanks.
But no thanks. I'll send a nice gift. Coming up, Texas Tech in the headlines, all the wrong reasons. This is Locked On Big 12 and Locked On Cougars. Hey, today's show is brought to you by Monarch. Monarch is exactly where I go when I need some help with my money, and I need a whole lot of help with my money. I'm 24 years old. I don't know what to do when the money hits my account. I'm like, oh, look, dollars. But Monarch helps all of that. It's my all-in-one financial advisor. But it's not like this. It's an accountability thing where I don't feel bad. I don't look at a Monarch and I'm like, well, shoot, I'm spending way too much on this or this or this, and then I'm berated for it. No, it helps you actually understand your finances. Help me organize my accounts, track my spending, even find an old 401k that I didn't even know my old boss gave me a 401k. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for half off your first year. Monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year at Monarch. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. I don't get it. BYU is an underdog to Iowa State. Last week I made lots, and I put $300 on BYU money line. It hit. They were underdogs. That's a lot of money in my pocket. This week, same thing. Plus 122 right now against Iowa State, I believe. And so I want to go on there, and I'm going to say, FanDuel, please give me BYU money line. And you can do that at any point in time this week, and it's probably going to behoove you. At least it may behoove me. FanDuel is where I go to play parlays or straight bets or all that jazz, even same-game parlays. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today to get started. If your first $5 bet hits, you get $300 in bonus bets. $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits at FanDuel. Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars, consummate professional, so has kind of the finger of the pulse of the entire Big 12. And while we could have talked BYU the entire show today, Texas Tech, oh my gosh, in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons. They lose the game to Arizona State. Their starting quarterback is day-to-day and might not be able to play. We don't even know when Baron Morton will be back to play, and Texas Tech certainly needs him. Now, they have a win this week. I don't know if they need him to beat Oklahoma State, but what we do know is they aren't doing too hot, and this is really the one that's going to bury them. Kirby Hocutt, the athletic director, comes out and says, no more tortillas. Jake Hatch, the tradition is done. Texas Tech banning throwing tortillas on the field.
Yeah, that's going to be about as effective as BYU's PA announcer saying, don't storm the field after you beat Utah last Saturday. How did that go?
Yeah, it's funny. When you tell like 19-year-olds something, Jake, what do they typically do?
They're going the opposite way, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. Texas Tech is going to have a full-on fan revolt. There will be more tortillas thrown than there were before, in my opinion.
I would because they're going to, scour the kids. Which, on the one hand, I've been to multiple college football games. Security's not always well paid and well staffed, but if they are, they're going to scour the students to find tortillas anywhere on their person. I would have them in my boot. I would have like sewable tortillas where I could like piece them back together when I got in. I would find any way possible for tortillas. Another piece of this, though, I want to defend Texas Tech. Of all of the traditions in college football, I think it's a pretty neat one. It's a funny one, and it's so harmless to anything and everything. It's been a non-issue. I don't understand why the Big 12 is coming down on tortillas.
You and me both. And the funny thing is, I know BYU fans out there, if you're old enough, you can harken back to the early 2000s, Drake. BYU under Gary Crowton his first year went 12-2, and they were 12-0 at one point and looking like they may go to the Fiesta Bowl. And it started a little mini tradition of BYU fans throwing tortillas on the field of Lavelle Edwards Stadium. And that caused the university to say, hey, no more of this. I'm with you. I don't get what it's such a big deal here with throwing tortillas. It's not like you're throwing, trust me, I'm an international soccer fan, you watching U.S. men's national team. Try going to Estadio Azteca down there in Mexico City. They're throwing bags of urine, heated up coins, batteries at the heads of the U.S. men's national team. There are legendary stories of that stuff happening. This is nothing compared to what you experience in other sports.
And I don't think there's any fan base in the Big 12 like Kansas going, oh, now we can't throw batteries on the field. No one, this is a non-issue for other fan bases. And if the commissioner is saying, well, if we allow one team to do it, we are going to have to allow the other team. No one else is throwing tortillas.
It happens one place. It happens in Lubbock, Texas. Leave it alone.
You know what I think is also funny? It would be so Big 12 if the rule book just stated no throwing objects on the field unless they're tortillas. That'd be a hilariously awesome PR move for the conference to distinguish, hey, we can keep this tradition because it's an awesome visual when 30,000 tortillas fly on national television during the opening kickoff. I think it's great. I just don't see where UCF fans will be like, oh, we can't throw water bottles. They're throwing tortillas. This doesn't seem like a thing we need to protect ourselves from biting us in the long run.
Yes, yeah, I'm with you on that, Drake. I don't know what the burr up, whose rear end is that's causing this to be an issue for the Big 12, because it is harmless. They're tortillas. Now, we're not Kansas and we're not dropping pocket knives on the field and then trying to argue that it was thrown from the crowd to make it a bigger deal than it actually was. We'll talk about that momentarily, I'm sure. But it's a tortilla. It's not going to do any damage to anybody. And by the way, the guys on the sidelines and the women as well, I just use guys across the board, they're not going to be hurt by a tortilla coming sailing from the top deck of Jones Stadium down there in Lubbock. I just don't see why this is an issue at all. It's harmless. It's fun. It's a tradition that's been around for literally decades, as I understand it. Why not have some fun with this? Because I'm with you, Drake. It'd be really cool to see them revamp the rule book. Say, hey, you can't throw anything but a tortilla.
Yeah, and look, if every Big 12 team starts doing it, that's even cooler. We have our own thing in the Big 12. That's where you go to get tortillas thrown at you. Don Williams tweets, how does Tech enforce it? In quotes, quoting Kirby Hocutt, we will encourage and remind fans at the gate to not bring tortillas in. If they brought them, we'll ask them to discard them before they come into the stadium. We're also going to have reminders in the stands before kickoff. You never want to do this, but if there are folks that decide to go ahead and throw tortillas and they are caught, we will suspend their ticket privileges for the remainder of this academic year. That's a pretty serious, that's Kirby Hocutt being very serious about this.
I once again, I'm at a loss for all of this. I don't get it, because if let's say they didn't know that the hoax with the pocket knife was legit, because we found out that absolutely was. It was planted by Kansas, and Lance Leipold ran out and was like, hey, this would no, it wasn't thrown. It was dropped by your own staff member. So stop it with that nonsense. I'm glad they got fined for their role in that nonsense. But had they stuck with their guns with that, maybe, just maybe, Drake, that might be the smallest of reasons why they could have banned this. Because, a pocket knife's one thing and a tortilla is another. But the fact that it was proven to be a farce with regards to the pocket knife, and it's just a tortilla, this just screams that somebody's got an ulterior motive here that I'm not sure what to make of it, but it just needs to go away. We just need to let it die.
So we'll quickly get to the pocket knife thing. If you're not familiar, this is one of the wildest stories you will never hear. National media didn't want to touch it. Yeah. Kansas's head coach, Lance Leipold, comes to the podium and says, Texas Tech threw a knife at us. Mm-hmm. And that sounds very serious, by the way. Yeah. Come to find out, a Kansas staffer just dropped the knife on the sideline and picked it up. It's like, oh, look, penalize them. They're throwing knives, which is an insane thing to do, by the way. And obviously Texas Tech was really, really upset with this. Yeah. I think the Big 12 should have come down harder on Kansas, because who does that? Who plants a knife on the sideline to try to earn a penalty, to try to affect the game? The Kansas Jayhawks do. I hope that assistant is fired in the wake of this or severely punished. Yeah. About as wild a story as you can drum up. I don't think I've seen this one yet.
We're going to plant evidence on the field. Watch this. And the worst part about this, Drake, is I've worked for multiple professional organizations, and the camera angles that these facilities these days have, Drake, they can pinpoint and find people they can find direct individuals and know exactly what happened. And they found it very, very quickly looking at the security footage down there in Lubbock. The fact that they thought they were going to get away with this, speaking of Kansas, it's Bush League. Absolutely, they should have been hammered harder than they were.
That's today's news in Texas Tech, and they lost. Quickly here, I still think they're a contender. I'm not taking them out of that category, right?
Well, that's the thing about this is they've lost one game. They're not out of the race by any means. We talked about Utah a little bit earlier on. The fact that they've lost to both Tech and BYU, they're essentially 3 games back in this race. Tech's just 1 game back. They are absolutely in this race, and BYU faces a relative murderer's row coming up. Cincinnati's got some really tough games. So yeah, Tech should be thinking, hey, that's our mulligan. We used our mulligan here. Now we got to make another run
against a good team. Arizona State is still in that race as well. Utah is, honestly, though they don't have the tiebreaker against 2 of the top teams in the league, Texas Tech and BYU. Coming up, religion. But in a sports way, and in a way that I think a lot of Big 12 fans could take notes or learn a thing or two. Locked On Big 12, Locked On Cougars. Oh, today's version of Dose Grande is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I go when I want to go to a concert, to a football game, to anything. I'm looking at BYU and Utah tickets, and when I went to the game, it's like, okay, the university was kind enough to gift me a couple spots, but I wanted to do a little giveaway, and it's like, okay, how do I do that? Well, first I'm gonna have to go to Game Time and find out ticket prices. And it's like, whoa, they're way cheaper here than anywhere else, and that's just what Game Time is. Pull it up, couple taps, amazing deals. Talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. The app makes it super simple. Even see the exact seat before buying them. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKED on college for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time and do it today. Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars. Wildest thing happened this weekend. And I've been complimentary of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because there are fan bases at the Big 12, whether it's Colorado or Arizona, fan bases outside of the Big 12 like Stanford, that treat a religion poorly. That the hate speech they give toward a faith, and an evangelical faith, by the way, one that I don't think that I'm almost positive there are identifying Christians that are in the stands chanting, F the Mormons, who don't understand Mormons. That's the word they use, are also Christian. And you may be thinking this is a sports podcast. Yeah, but there's a lot of ignorance around the Big 12. And one of the coolest things that happened this weekend, Kalani Sitake comes up to me. I've never met him. I stay away from players and coaches as much as possible. Slippery slope, Mike Gundy situation. They get fired. I've got to report on it. Keep a distance. Comes up to me, first time meeting him, shakes my hand, and as soon as he grabs my hand, pulls me forward and engulfs my body. I was like, Coach, I'm Drake Toll. Nice to meet you. And he's like, I know who you are. And I just want to thank you. I was like, thank me for what? He's like, dude, just ignorance isn't a bad word, but for helping people understand BYU's not a bad place. BYU's not a scary place. This utopian, dystopian place. Jake, I think one fan base at a time, hopefully the Big 12, and it seems like they are coming around on the idea that these people aren't just crazy Mormons, but instead they bring a lot of value to this conference and they're very normal people.
But I think you're right, Drake, because there's a lot of monikers out there. There's a lot of people who will tell you that Mormons are one thing, they're another thing. As a lifelong member of the faith, I can tell you, I feel like I'm a fairly normal person. Yeah, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do a lot of the things.
No, he's healthy. Wow.
But the point is, there is this perception out there that Mormons are like these fundamentalists, and you see it. You mentioned it. The TV versions of Mormons make you think we're absolute freaks. Is probably the best term I can use, and I'm allowed to use it because I am a member of the faith. But the situation is, I think if you come out here to Provo, see how rabid a fan base that BYU has, see how literally normal a lot of our fans are, you're going to realize, you know what? They're just like me. They're a normal football fan who just happens to be a member of another religion. That's a simple fact of life. You're right. There are a lot of people out there who chant the F the Mormons and that type of stuff that have no idea what a Mormon believes, who a Mormon is, or what they're actually doing when they do it. They're just kind of going along with the crowd. I fully understand that. I was appreciative that Colorado took some measures to clean that up. And I'm hoping the other universities in the Big 12, if and when it comes back around, they'll take the same type of measures. But you're right. I think fan base by fan base, Cougar fans are showing, hey, we're no different than you guys. We love our team, and we just happen to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So it makes you think, had Colorado chanted F the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that's like a double-edged sword where you're like, hey, too far. But also, thanks for not saying Mormon. There's something to that. This league, I think, took a huge stance in standing up for BYU and finding Colorado and showing that religious hate is not going to be allowed in this conference, no matter who it's against. Another piece of this, Jake, I had a beer at a tailgate before the game. And
I know who you were hanging out with, by the way, because they texted me right after that. By the way.
And the whole crew that's having a beer, they're like, yeah, Tom Holmoe used to come out and not have a beer, but he would hang out with us and just showcase that, look, you can be a BYU fan, not be a member of the church. You can be a BYU fan and be a member of the church. You can be whoever you want at a BYU game. And I had a Coors Light. And my buddies back home were like, what? There's no way. It's not allowed. You can't do it. It's like, no. There's a misconception about these people that you walk in and they're like, well, you're going to hell. And that's just not what it is.
You're right. Here's the thing. One of my dearest friends in terms of BYU fans that I know and I absolutely love, Drake, he is about as hard drinking, hard living a man you'll ever meet. he loves his BYU Cougars. The dichotomy in a lot of people's minds, if you were to meet this individual and what you think BYU stands for and what it is all about, you'd be like, how in the world do these two get together? Well, he likes to drink, he likes to swear like a sailor, and he likes to live his life the way he lives his life. But he also, at the same time, he absolutely adores and cheers his heart out for the BYU Cougars. And I'm all for it, Drake. We come in all shapes and sizes. I'm telling you, across the spectrum. And the older I get, the more life experience I get. It doesn't matter what religion you are. More and more of us, we happen to have a team and a religion may be a fan of or be a member of. And guess what? That's who we are. But at our core, we're all human beings. We all love sports in this realm, and we like to go out and support our teams. There's nothing wrong with that across the board.
Transubstantiation.
Mm-hmm.
You familiar with that word?
Yes.
I'm going back to my Christian scriptures days, my freshman year at Baylor. Transubstantiation. This was a thing in well, I guess it not was, but it's kind of Catholicism was butchered by the early Americans. They hated in the early days of the United States. They hated Catholics because they were like, oh, they're cannibals. And you're like, what? Like, yeah, they think that it's actually Jesus's blood or his flesh. Like, yes. Are you going to take us to school here?
So, okay, Drake, I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I served in Taiwan. Taiwan does not have a Christian background in any way, shape, or form. It's Buddhism, Taoism, and some Confucianism mixed in there across the board when it comes to people in Taiwan. What people know about Mormons and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Taiwan, Drake, one of the first questions I asked, one of the first days I was in the country, hey, do you have those horns I've heard about? Because that's one of the transubstantiations that has existed for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for literally decades, is that Mormons grow horns, Drake.
Legendary.
Let's see. If you're watching on YouTube, you see any horns on my head?
Legendary. Is that why I have two little nubs coming in up here? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, that's it, Greg. That's why you got the nubs growing in.
They're
careful. You got to
me over.
You got to cut them down every so often so they don't protrude. You know.
See that's the whole transubstantiation thing is the reason that Catholics were banned from buildings for decades, even in this country. So you can look at people groups like, oh, they're weird. They're different, no doubt, than you because they have different beliefs for sure, but. In the same way that BYU fans or students don't drink or don't smoke, in the same way students cannot, which at any university, there are lists of rules and laws. And the second you graduate from that university, if you're a BYU kid and you have a beer, you still have the degree from BYU. It doesn't go anywhere. It's not like an honor code in life that you have to abide by or you're arrested. Another piece of this is I go to A&M. That's a cult, man. Like their gig thing they do, that's incredibly embarrassing. You know what I find embarrassing, and every fan base does it. The damn wave. When they do the wave across the stadium, it takes the energy out of the stadium. The players hate it. You're just sitting there waiting, when's the wave going to come? It is weirder than anything BYU does, and not to mention, I thought it was great.
Hey, Drake, here's the thing: BYU's done the wave in eras past. Now, I will say this. In the last 3 years since they joined the Big 12, I have not seen the wave that I recall at LaVell Edwards Stadium. I'm very grateful for that. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. I love that now there are fire dancers on the field and Cosmo on top of the scoreboard, and it's one of the best game day experiences legitimately in the country. The only qualm I have, hold on, this is in my notes. I immediately put it, I thought it was so they do the whole fire dance thing. Utah scores immediately, which wasn't planned. Didn't have that in the cards. And then BYU, this is it. This is the only qualm that I have. Did the kicks cam. We go from to show us your shoes. Whoever has the best shoes wins a gift card. You're like, why didn't we do this in the first quarter? Why didn't we do this really early in the game? We went from the coolest thing. Yeah, there it is.
Corporate sponsors, man. And they I'm with you. Here's the thing. When you're going to do what they do, they call it turbulence, the thing they do between the third and fourth quarters. You're right. To flip from that to, hey, insert company here. We're going to spend some money and you're going to do this contest for us. Do those earlier on in the game. Now, BYU's game day staff, David DeCalana and the rest of the crew down there, they put on an incredible show in addition to the football game. You're there for the football game, but they keep you absolutely engaged from kickoff to when the clock hits 0 in the fourth quarter with all the different things they do. But to your point, Drake, there are times when you can, do some different things, it feels like.
Yeah, that was my only grab. I put it in my notes. Kicks cam? ? Like, what are we doing?
Well, they also have like the Simba cam that they do from time to time. There's the.
Did you see the Bear Bachmeier Simba?
I did not.
Oh my gosh! Takes his nephew after the game, like Simba's him with the crowds on the field.
Oh, he did after the game. Wow.
Yes, crowd, like they've stormed the field. He goes into the stands, gets his nephew, and picks the child up in front of the entire crowd that had stormed. It was a legendary moment for the kid that woke up the next morning and played guitar. The people are always like, "No, this guy talks about BYU so often." Okay, the second that Rocco Back plays guitar at a nursing home the day after beating Iowa, maybe I'll give a little bit more prep, to Rocco Back. But that's just, I guess it's the BYU way, man. Jake, how can more folks? I'm sure all of the Locked On Big 12 listeners are familiar with you. I know everybody that I encountered on Saturday said, "So where's Jake Hatch? Isn't he supposed to be with you?" And I was like, "He's somewhere around here." How can folks that are not familiar with your show find more of it?
Just check out Locked On Cougars wherever you get your podcasts. Also available on YouTube, like this fine program. And if you want more on social media, just search out Locked On Cougars on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
Love it. That is Jake Hatch. All things Cougars, Locked On Cougars, every single day with the Locked On Podcast Network. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. A crossover with Cougars and Dose Grande.